So I think for this next game, we're going to show an example where black actually plays around the d5 square and manages to win, despite white having domination d5 square. So don't be completely worried if your opponent is controlling d5. Especially in this game, if you can't get the knight to d5, then it's not always a terminal problem for black, as Fischer himself shows in this real positional masterpiece.
I was getting worried. I thought, well, why the hell are we filming this DVD?
Yeah.
It's like win after win for white. We showed the dangers. So just take us to the key points how Fischer deals with d5.
Sure.
So he played. So another thing we should point out now. I'm hoping this doesn't confuse you. We're always looking at these games from the side who we're demonstrating the point from. Now we're switching the board because I think it's good to also get different views. We're thinking before. We had a long discussion about this, whether we should look at every game from the white side or the black side. But then I think we came to the conclusion that, you know, we need to show it both angles so you get used to seeing it from both sides. I think that'd be more useful. Danny's doing a very difficult frown there. But we're showing it from black, so now we're looking at
I don't think there's any discussions that go on in Ginger GM that... anyway.
Thanks, mate.
It's just a one-man show, you know, one-man business, total domination.
Why don't you just get out the bloody door now, mate? So... Okay, e5 and show us them.
Yeah, so it's a conventional way to play it. As I was saying earlier, the knight comes here and black has very harmonious development with rook to c8.
Okay.
So we get very natural. So again, white is really fighting for control of this d5 square.
Because he's getting rid of the bishop.
Yeah. And in this position, black plays a very useful move. He plays a move b5. So he's trying to reinforce his control over the queen side. Understandably, white takes that because again he's fighting for control over d5, this important d5 square. So his basic plan in this game is to exchange off all these pieces and leave black with this hold on d5.
So white just wants to exchange. White is exchange off every black piece that's controlling. Highlight that d5 square, Danny.
Yeah.
That square there. That's white's idea. So let's see how Bobby. But Bobby's opened up some lines on the queen side and. How else does he deal with this? So let's have a look.
Here he plays a very smart move. He plays the move bishop to b5.
Why is that smart?
Well, because it just he doesn't want to exchange it off too easily. He wants to force white to maybe open up the a file to give him some more, to give black some more chances. Because you've always got to think, how can I increase my sort of chances?
Okay, and that actually happens, doesn't it, in a game?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean here. Maybe white could have played bishop d3, but then possibly bishop d7 would have been played.
Or bishop c6, I guess.
Of course, white continues with the same philosophy. He's going to take on...
Yeah, why not? Let's control that d5 square.
And now play knight d5. But this is where Fischer really showed his mastery, because he took on d5. And he played...
so let me have a look at this. Okay,
sure.
So this is... You know, even if we do flip the board, because we are showing this from both points of view, if we flip it quickly, look, white has got the d5 square. If he can get the knight to d5, if that knight can get there, that is the examples you've been showing, which Fischer did. That knight would dominate the bishop. So let's flip it back. We're looking at it from the black side. What makes this position different to the other examples you've given? Why is black okay here, but not in the last two games?
Well, I think mainly because that knight is going to take so long to get round to d5.
Well, show a possible route. So where could...
So the knight could go via c1 to e2 and then c3.
Yeah.
Is there any other way? He can't get there very easily.
It will take 4 moves, yeah?
Exactly, because the queen would have to move.
5 moves to get the knight there.
And there's a slight drawback to white's position, if we think about it. In the other game, Fischer had the pawn on f3.
So highlight the square where it used to be?
So basically, the white pawn was on f3.
Yeah.
Whereas now, white has this isolated e-pawn, which is a potential weakness.
Yeah.
And now here, Fischer played a move, which is, I think, is a very nice move. He played a move, rook to a4. And actually, if you stick this position on an engine, even over 56 years after this game was played, the computer wants to play rook a4. So Fischer really played like this game to perfection.
And this is taking control either of the a file, maybe having some pressure horizontally as well. And basically, you know, if you ever get yourself in this situation as black, just try to play as actively as possible. Active is always the best. And
absolutely,
you can see here after rook c8.
Yeah.
He's got all his pieces active. And what was his kind of breaking move? Let's just see what the break was to sort of...
Yeah, by the way, Son, just before we get to that, I just want to say, I've had this kind of structure many, many times in Najdorf, and I think this is one of the nicest ways you can actually win the game, is when White has his pawn on f5 and his pawn on e4.
Highlight those pawns, please.
So,
yeah.
And you've got this very unbreakable structure with a pawn on d6 and pawn on e5. And he can't bring the knight to d5, then you've actually got a very good position. I've won many games like this. I wouldn't
have known that before filming this. But what you're saying is, sorry to show, if this pawn here on f5,
sure,
which we've had in the other cases, was back here.
Sure.
So if people can imagine that pawn being back on f3, you know, when you have this nice pawn chain guarding e4, that is much more advantageous for White than this position.
Sure.
f6 is a bit of a pipe dream. F6 is something you watch out for.
Yeah.
But generally, this pawn here, maybe White could claim some edge then, because maybe. I mean, I don't know, because you're defending e4. But here e4...
It would change a lot. It would change a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So show us where Bobby broke through.
Well, there was a very nice finish, actually.
Okay.
It was very tactical.
Yeah.
So tactics really mixed with
Bishop
strategy.
comes in. Yeah.
And here, Fischer played a very nice move, actually. He played the move Queen A7.
Trying to come in, yeah.
Yeah, he's just trying to get in at White's weaknesses. And now Rook A2 again, very tactical.
Yeah.
So you're threatening Rook takes B2.
Yeah.
White here blundered. He needed to come up with a very, a very defensive move, maybe something like Rook B. Well, no, Rook.
Sure.
The problem is, if you play a move like Rook B1,
Rook C3.
there's Rook C3.
Yeah.
So I think already White is in trouble, but he blundered in this position.
Yeah.
He played the move King F1.
Ah, okay. Now the next move, nice move from Black.
Rook takes C3.
And White resigned.
White resigned.
Yeah. So the moral to learn from that game is, if you get these situations, the one thing you've taught me there is the pawn structure of White's. If White is not defending the pawn on e4,
absolutely,
then you can play these positions a lot more because you've got a target.
I think Black is the one who's pressing in the long term.
I didn't realise that. I've learnt something, and also, if you do get them, always play as actively as you can.
Sure.
Rook A4, Bishop G5, good moves, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I think you want to avoid ending up in a bind, and Fischer did that very well here in this game because he played extremely actively and didn't give White any time, basically.
Nice.
All
right. Well, that's our domination of D5, is it? I mean, is that we've dealt with that square?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much summed it up.
Good.
Pretty well. Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, let's move on to the next theme.
Okay. Cool.